From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Good morning, and thank you for watching Texas This Week. A big shakeup for Austin's public media station could have political implications, and the Independent, hoping to run for Texas Lieutenant Governor, is suing the state, saying the law will keep him off the ballot. Those stories in just a minute, but first, let's get to the 3 things you need to know in Texas politics. The Texas House and Senate Joint Committee tasked with investigating the July 2025 flood that claimed the lives of 25 young girls, their 2 teenage counselors, and the director of Camp Mystic signed off on its investigative report on Thursday. They concluded leaders of the all-girls youth camp failed to meet state emergency requirements or do enough to prepare for the deadly flood. Lawmakers will use this report to shape future legislation. National Republicans are planning to hold a rare midterm convention, and GOP U.S. Senate candidate and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says it will be in Dallas. On Monday, he held a teletown hall telling supporters the GOP convention will take place in Dallas in September with an expected appearance by President Donald Trump. The Texas Education Agency released STAR test results for 3rd through 8th graders. Students made slight gains in social studies and math. Reading results remain largely steady. After facing Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in the polls twice, accountant Mike Collier hoped to be on the ballot for a 3rd time. But instead of running as a Democrat this time around, he decided to run as an independent, only to find out getting on the ballot is harder without the backing of a political party. Now he's suing the state. We sat down to talk about his lawsuit. Tell us about this lawsuit.
Well, so my goal is to run as an independent for lieutenant governor, as you know, and there are requirements for independent candidates to get on the ballot. Namely, you have to have a bunch of signatures, of petitions, 82,000 signatures. And I talked to a lot of people before I decided to do this. And so many folks have said it can't be done. It can't be done. It's too many. You've never done this before. You'll find out that it can't be done. Well, now I agree. It can't be done. It's just not right. I mean, the Constitution doesn't say anything about signatures. It's the legislature passed this law. It keeps independents from running for office. And I think it's time that we have independent candidates. So we're going to federal court to say this has to be resolved. It has to be fixed, not just for the benefit of my campaign, and I hope we get a resolution in time, but for future campaigns for independents who would like to run.
There may be critics who say, well, there wasn't an issue with the system when you were the Democratic nominee, twice for lieutenant governor. Why is it an issue now? What would you say to those folks?
Well, if you want to run for one of the parties, you just write a very small check, $3,000, and then wait and see if you get elected. You're on the ballot. You have to win the primary, but you're on the primary ballot. If you want to run as an independent, you're not even on any ballot until you have produced these signatures. And to do it in 30 days, which is what I'm faced with, cannot be done with a volunteer network. It has to be done with paid gatherers, and that costs millions and millions of dollars. And so it's patently unfair. It forces somebody who wants to run as an independent to cut deals with special interests just to get on the ballot, which is something I won't do. So it doesn't serve the state to require an independent candidate to get 82,000 signatures in 30 days. That's a signature, and you have to do it face to face. You have to have a conversation by law, and you've got to have a signature every 15 seconds. For 30 days if you work 12-hour days, 30 seconds if you work around the clock. And it can't be done, and it's not fair, and it's not good for our politics.
Yeah, a couple of things we want to note about that. Also, the person the person signing cannot have voted, right, in either the Republican or the Democratic primary. The number that you mentioned, it's tied to the number of people who voted in the past gubernatorial election. So you made this point, the number is also always changing.
Well, and if I could say it's always changing because it's 1% of the last gubernatorial vote. You know, the last time somebody was able to get on the ballot as an independent was 20 years ago. Kinky Friedman, the number that he had to come up with was about 45,000, and he had about 3 or 4 months to do it. Very different now. I've got 30 days to do almost twice that. And then the other thing, it's very important, and you pointed this out. You know, there's a lot of very, very important decisions that need to be made in the primary. Who's going to run for Senate? Who's going to run for governor? Who's going to run for attorney general, and so forth? And I made sure that I told people who said, Mike, I want to sign your petition. Should I vote in the primary? I said, yes, you should vote in the primary. I mean, those elections are hugely important. And when you vote in the primary, then you cannot cannot sign my petition. And that's just not right. And so that's a part of this lawsuit.
Yeah. You know, do you think that you're going to be able to get the number of signatures that are required by the deadline?
Oh, no, I won't be turning in 82,000 signatures a week from today. And what we're doing is two things. We're trying to reduce that number and then firm up the timeline and make some other changes. I don't want it to be easy for somebody to get on the ballot as an independent, but I also don't want it to be impossible. So we're hoping for the future that the courts agree. And so we set out as a state to change those rules. Whether or not that comes in time for my campaign, I don't know. But there's something more important, which is for the future.
Right off the bat, we want to make it very clear. You know Debbie personally.
We worked together for many years at the Austin American-Statesman, where she was the top editor for a number of years. And actually, I want to say that in the journalism community, Debbie Hyatt is regarded as a journalistic professional of the highest integrity. And she has actually said in public statements that her speaking out in this instance was an example of her calling a public institution to account and also not allowing a major public institution in our community to make statements that she said established a false narrative, that it is the work of journalism, and her own station, KUT, to prevent that from happening.
And so I want to take a step back here and talk to us about the incident, right? What exactly are said to believe led up to the firing?
Yeah, I would say incidents, because this was sort of a rolling thing that happened. So in the weeks leading up, and really the days leading up to the inaugural KUT festival, this was a community festival, a fundraiser, of course, for Austin's public radio station. I was a panelist at that festival, and essentially KUT began receiving word from the university administration that they were raising concerns about security and whether or not there would be ample security for this event. KUT ultimately insisted that the festival at least partially be removed from campus, but Debbie Hyatt released a public statement essentially saying, hold on, we as a radio station and as an organization did everything that was asked of us related to security. We made every accommodation that was demanded by the university. And so essentially she said that she was extremely baffled about why this was happening, that it was extremely confusing. And actually that is what gave rise to whether or not there were ulterior motives by the university and whether or not the idea of security or the notion of security was really just a pretext to remove the festival from campus.
And so when we think about that happened with the festival, and then according to her, she really didn't hear anything else from leadership up until the time that she was given an ultimatum.
I was told by her on Monday that she was summoned to a meeting with representatives from the university's legal department, as well as its human resources department, as well as the acting dean for the Moody College of Communication, and essentially given two letters that she could choose from. One is a resignation letter. The other is a termination letter. She chose to be terminated instead of resigning, and that actually has really put all of this back into the spotlight. People who, number one, KUT is a beloved community institution.
Absolutely.
And Debbie Hyatt's reputation is outstanding in the community. And so that has just really regalvanized a lot of attention and put a whole spotlight on this issue yet again, raising questions about whether or not the University of Texas is moving to the right and becoming more conservative. There's also the concern among many people in Austin who support public media, whether or not this is can be seen as a continuation of Republicans and conservatives' assault on public media that we've seen throughout the recent months, in which they say that public media is in their words and in their minds, just too liberal.
Yeah, and when we think about it, I want to take a moment because you got exactly where I wanted to go. There's politics behind this because of the current environment of what's happening with universities. Even right here in Texas, we're seeing leadership appointed that have political backgrounds rather than educational backgrounds to lead these public institutions of higher learning. There's a lot of rules coming down for universities, whether it's DEI mandates or, like you said, looking at curriculum and what is being taught, and this idea that they're too liberal.
And University of Texas officials have been under, frankly, tremendous pressure from the Republicans in the state of Texas to rid the university and universities across the state of a perceived or, in their minds, a reality around liberal bias, that they are under the pressure to do that. And so if lawmakers who control their funding and control their budget are exerting that kind of pressure, there is the concern among many people who are closely following this that there is a capitulation to that. And they say that that, of course, intrudes potentially on academic freedom and just the overall climate and culture of the state's flagship university.
Are we hearing anything about potential fallout? What are you hearing from leaders in Austin, really about this?
Ashley, one of the big conversations that has emerged out of this is really a focus on the increasingly fraught relationship between the University of Texas and its public radio station, KUT. Keep in mind that UT has held the license for KUT, the radio station, for decades now. And I think many people will tell you that it has been an ideal home for KUT, that UT provides a level of infrastructure. KUT has been able to maintain its editorial independence. But there is now an increased conversation about whether or not this is time to break up and whether or not KUT should possibly find a new home. It's important to note that almost entirely KUT is made up of community support, and whether or not they should find a new home, be it at potentially, Austin Community College or stand on its own independently somewhere. So that is part of the conversation that is really in the earliest of phases right now.
Well, that's Texas This Week.